If we keep running our energy costs up, it is going to be more cost effective for people to build things in the developing world who seem to be getting a leave pass on carbon compliance. They can keep using coal.
Well, this morning on the Flow Morning Show, I want to take a look at manufacturing. And are we able to increase Australian manufacturing? Australian-owned, all of those catch cries that everybody loves to jump onto the back of. But in the end, somebody has to have a plan to put it together. Well, today, the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union in its South Australian branch are launching a nationwide Support Aussie Made campaign for manufacturing. And I've got Rikki Lambert here from the Flow News 24 desk to discuss it. Hi, Rikki. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So, we hear so much about manufacturing. We need more of it and we've got to get it to happen. So, who actually is responsible for getting more of it and having it happen?
Well, at first principle, it's the employers, the people that run the manufacturing plants that are responsible for growing manufacturing. But of course, government plays a significant role in greasing the wheels and the cogs and making sure that that works. And how they do that is making it easier for them to produce, say, food and fibre in regional manufacturing.
So the Australian Manufacturing Workers Union is calling together folk. They would be clearly looking at more jobs for workers. But are there enough workers to move workers, say, from now other industries that have moved out of manufacturing, maybe in more recent times, as we've seen big industrial plants close? Are those workers actually readily available?
Well, if you'd asked me before the pandemic, I would have given you a different answer. But what we've got at the moment is a labour shortage, a shortage of workers, which the AI group, the peak employer body, who may differ from the union about how to get manufacturing cranking, they spoke with me, and the full interview's on the Flow News 24 podcast, actually, and they said, look, we do need more workers because otherwise all we've done during the pandemic and during the recovery is just get back to where we were. We're still not even there with manufacturing. If we're going to have a higher manufacturing base than we had before the pandemic, we need more workers.
Okay, so the union then says the Liberal government, this is the South Australian government, is not backing manufacturing workers by mandating the use of local content right now. There has been no guarantee given that local steel from, say, out of Whyalla will be used in the transmitters, or at least the towers that will be carrying the interconnector, that is the power lines between New South Wales and South Australia. So, Rikki, on that note, there's $2 billion of a project there. Should there be a position where the federal government and state governments are forced to buy Australian steel and Australian components from our Australian manufacturers?
Well, first of all, hard hats off to the AMWU. It's good that they're pushing this campaign, and you would expect them to run this sort of campaign from their side of how they see things in politics and on the workforce, is that you need to have incentives for businesses to buy our product. Now, let me also be clear when it comes to labour. We can retrain people in Australia. There is still a sweet spot I talked about with the AI group of about 1% of Australians, about 700,000 still looking for work. We could train young people or even retrain people in the workforce into manufacturing so that we do have full employment. But that's not a long-term solution. That's part of the solution, but we need these extra workers to come in, and that comes back to the COVID stuff you've talked about earlier on the show and being able to open the country up again.
So if a manufacturer is sure that the federal government will buy its steel or its other commodities, or the state government will use it in their particular purchases, then maybe they'd be more keen to invest. But are they not keen to invest because the costs of manufacturing in Australia are too high? So here we have the union saying we should be using more local labour, but then you have business saying that local labour is expensive and that some components are cheaper to have them made overseas, while we might assemble things here instead of maybe manufacture the whole lot.
Yeah, Wayne, and I think one of those major input costs that we've been talking about, you look at the foundry, I think in Adelaide, for instance, that closed, is energy. A recycling plant, I think it was, that closed because of the cost of doing what they do in their plant. If we keep running our energy costs up, it is going to be more cost effective for people to build things in the developing world who seem to be getting a leave pass on carbon compliance. They can keep using coal.
It's a very interesting discussion on manufacturing. The Australian Manufacturers Workers Union will be in South Australia talking today about a campaign to increase locally made content, locally purchased content, locally acquired by, say, governments in the areas of vehicle building, metal and engineering, food and technical and laboratory products. So we'll see how their meeting goes and what the announcements they make are in South Australia today. But Rikki, good to talk to you about this topic.